statement. Last week, the Bradley County Mall, there was a charrette, a visioning session for 3 days. On the third day, we were supposed to get feedback, the public's opinion on the plan that they want to develop, the BCC 2035. There was no feedback on that plan because the results were too negative. So you think what she's saying about being Delphied and manipulated is not true, and it's not here in Bradley County? I'm a living example. I was at that charrette. I was there from the moment it started until the moment it closed at night. And I watched and I monitored and I talked to people coming into that charrette who had no clue about what a brownfield is, what redevelopment was, but they were filling out the forms. They were making comments. They had no idea. But because at the end of that charrette, those results were too negative, there was no feedback. And I want you all to know that.
They got them. See, they will say, if you're successful, we've been doing this, we've been anti-Delphing these meetings all over the San Francisco Bay Area and really giving them a run for their money there, freaking them out, because they're not used to this kind of thing. They think they've been just going like a train, you know. They think they can just do this without the people stopping them. And now we're starting to throw some bricks in their path, and they're freaking out. But they get smart. They figure out a way around you fast. So you got to be quick too, and you got to figure out new ways. But they will say, "Oh, well, we had to shut down the meeting because there were disturbances. The people were making trouble, so we shut down the meeting." And then when they have the new meeting, they don't tell you about it. They'll have it somewhere else, and they'll get their results. But you know what? When you go down and you tell your city manager and your city council or your county supervisors, you say, "You vote for this plan, it's going to be the last thing you do in this county. You vote for this, you're not in next time." Because I can pick 6 people or 7 people or 5 people or whatever out of this crowd, and they're going to do a better job. We are not going to stand for this anymore. We will run for office ourselves, and we will support people, we will vet people, we will ask people, what is your position on United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development? And if they say, "I don't know what it is," you give them a chance, you let them know, and then if they're squirrely and weaselly, they're out of there. This is how we do it. Question?
Comment about the APA. If you go to their website, there's a tool where you can find out if your city is putting out any bids. You'll find out ahead of time before they actually start doing it. You'll see that they're requesting a
Request for bid.
For
proposal.
Bid for a consultant for smart growth or comprehensive plan, and that's your cue to get involved before it even becomes public.
That's very good. You know, the American Planning Association has just put out a 12-week communications boot camp because planners are getting upset around the country because we're getting up and we're saying we don't want this. So they brought them in for a 12-week-long boot camp so that they could instruct them on how to handle us and how to shut us up and how to lie to us. They propagandize them. They're telling them, don't call it smart growth anymore. Call it quality growth now. This is it.
How could you be for dumb growth?
Don't talk about government money. It's all about the economy and jobs.
Right. Yeah, you want jobs, you want to come back? Go ahead.
This smart meter, they came out to my house today, and I wouldn't let them put it in.
Good.
Good.
That's Cleveland Utilities. And it sounds so good because they don't have to send, it'll save them money.
Save them money.
Sure.
Their
Save you
website.
money.
Oh, yeah. But you know what else will happen? Now, I know you make, isn't Whirlpool here and a couple of other appliances? Okay, well, they're putting chips in those new appliances so that your appliance, you know, and here's the other bad, freak out now. Because, check this out, because, you know, if you say, okay, well, I'm going to get around that, I'm going to keep my old appliances, and because the new appliances have to be connected to the smart meters or they're not going to work. So you keep your old appliances. Well, then your appliance breaks and you go, well, I'm going to go to the Goodwill and get myself another old appliance. Well, there's a program to buy up old appliances and destroy them like they did with our old cars. And they're going to do that. They will go and get old appliances and destroy them because you might be having an appliance without a smart meter. Yeah?
Another thing, too, I own quite a bit of land in Bradley County, and I have 2 signs on my property on 64 Highway. And now they tell me that I'm not allowed to put any other sign up within 600 feet of the highway right-of-way. In other words, they're telling me what to do. Yet, they're in competition with me because they put Vulcan material on the other side of my property. Their sign is there, and they have to pay the state. And that's illegal. So that's one thing. And there was one other thing I wanted to bring up. Oh, about the trees. I own a lot of timber. And all this green stuff. We've always managed our land, replanted and everything else.
Sure, that's right. Responsible, sustainable forestry, that's the real deal. But you don't own those resources. That's for the common good, not for you.
Put in a subdivision, they came out and found some wetland grass in one little place. So they took a whole section of it. Never has been, we put up hay for 50 years there and never had any wetland.
That's right. Misidentification of wetlands is a very powerful tool, and you will find that across the nation, misidentification of wetlands.
And I told them that I said, well, I hope you don't come to my house because I've got that in a pot that a bird has dropped right at my back door.
You know, I was appraising a property where a guy he couldn't do anything with his property. He was just furious, you can imagine, right? Had a lot of acreage. And he came out one day just to look at it. And there was a fish and game guy out there on his land. And he said, excuse me, not this nicely, but he said, excuse me, sir, what are you doing on my property? And the guy said, well, I think you've got pickleweed here, and this is clapper rail habitat. The guy said, this is my property, and you can get off my property. You are trespassing. And then he picked up a whole big clump of it and ate it right in front of the guy. Go ahead.
Yeah, could you kind of explain inverse condemnation and how private landowners are being overlaid? I'm unfortunately now having to deal with that with the new airport that's being built by my home, which of course they came before and said, we're just going to take 300 acres for this airport. Oh, no. A year later, now we have to have airspace zoning, which puts me really in an inverse condemnation, because now the city airport manager can come on my property and tell me what to do with my property, and I live in the county. And of course, they had to have that so that they could get their grant assurances from the FAA.
Right. So you're saying that you have a limit on the height of any building that you can put, or you can put no buildings at all on that on that land?
That might create a bird strike hazard.
Oh.
Might create a glare. And what I was noticing in my research with this is how I became aware of Agenda 21. A lot of the changes with the FAA seem to be about 1987. They started doing that, and it all kind of led me into my research. But you being in eminent domain, and explain how the zonings are going to affect the people. I mean, really, is there any good private property next to airports?
Well, I've seen that when I was appraising land that was next to Travis Air Force Base in California, because you can't have anything above a certain height, and this is, has a tremendous impact, obviously, on your value. You thought you could do something with your land, and suddenly you have no rights there. If they're imposing this, I would definitely get an attorney. If you do not have an attorney, I would get an attorney.
Well, I hired an attorney.
Okay.
A very good environmental attorney tell me he could stop it for $100,000.
Yeah, I know. I know.
But that's part of it. They can do this because they know
They're figuring you're not going to have the money. Look what happened with the Sacketts, with that couple out in Idaho, right? What did they get? What did they get at the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court, they were told by the EPA they were going to be fined $37,000 a day because they supposedly had a wetland on their property. They had to put it back the way it was. They were like freaking out. So they went to the Supreme Court with this, and what did the Supreme Court determine? The Supreme Court determined that they had the right to challenge the EPA. That's what they got. They had the right to challenge the EPA on basically this incredible. What they did to them was they frightened them to, most people would have backed down. A $37,000 fine a day. So you're told, hey, we're going to extort something from you. We can fix this. It's only $100,000.
Are they using eminent domain on your property?
No, it's inverse condemnation. They can zone it and tell me what I can and can't do with it. They can come on it at any time they do, but I get to still pay the property.
Right. So an inverse is entirely different. Inverse is eminent domain is when your land is actually being taken. So
Trying to sell that property now.
Exactly.
Get with Mayor Karen afterwards, because we're going to be lobbying for legislation next
Yep.
time for
Yes, we are.
all of this stuff.
go ahead.
One comment, quick question. Just recently, the Chamber of Commerce on the front page, Gary Farlow put out he dedicated a whole front page to that meeting you were talking about, and he was deriding the naysayers that were there, saying how they were basically idiots.
Tinfoil hats.
Progress, and that they're not for anything, and it was so negative, it was unreal.
Right.
So how do we plan? Because you have to plan. Other things just are crazy. So how do you plan without falling under this Agenda 21 thing?
Well, I'm not against planning, and regional planning obviously is important because when you've got transportation, you don't want your road to end at the end of your county, right? You don't want to just drop off a cliff at the end of your county. You need regional planning, right? But when you combine regional planning, transportation planning, and housing, when you determine where housing has to be specifically, and you use transportation tax dollars and property tax dollars to subsidize private development, you have overstepped your bounds. And then you are also doing breaking jurisdictional boundaries and erecting a shadow government. So this is completely...
Change with this BC 2035 so we're not under Agenda 21.
I would scrap that plan. You've got to scrap that plan. Yes. You have to scrap that
You
plan.
need to be going to every county commission.
Yeah, go ahead.
You paid out over $500,000. BCC 2035, the strategic plan was $250,000 to the consultants, and it's sitting on a shelf. And now they're creating another plan, BCC 2035, $275,000. You paid for that. And how many of you here can't pay your mortgage? If they've got that kind of money that they can pay consultants, they should be giving you a refund so you can pay your mortgage.
Okay.
What Ed is talking about under the FAA regulations, that is exactly right. It was around 1987. They have two little phrases in there about when they're going to build a new airport somewhere, and they don't tell the property owners outside of a certain area, but outside that area, when it's finished, will fall underneath. They have what they call A, B, and C zones.
Right. Yes, I've seen that.
Little phrases in there.
Right,
One
so
is
it's-
called an environmental nuisance, and the other one is called an attractive nuisance. And the environmental nuisance won't apply until the airport's built. They say, we don't want you to plant a tree because blackbirds will light on it.
You'll see that too, even with your utility easements. You're not supposed to have a tree taller than 15 feet. And you will have your trees cut when they determine that they want to cut those trees down. They will cut your trees down. So, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for bringing this message tonight and pointing out that it's not a left-right thing, it's an Americanist thing. In 1992, the John Birch Society sent one of its journalists down to the Earth Summit and wrote about it in 1992 in our magazine, The New American, and been warning Americans about it since then. Of course, we've been smeared for that. But the Southern Poverty, the Southern Poverty Law Center out of Montgomery, Alabama, is now also smearing anybody against Agenda 21, specifically people like Tom DeWeese of the American Policy Institute.
Yeah, I think they named my group in their article too. And because their thing is, this is one of the reasons, of course I am a Democrat, I've been one since '74, but calling my group Democrats Against U.N. Agenda 21 is a huge statement, because it's so easy to smear you with just saying you're a bunch of right-wing nuts. And now they're like, uh-oh, what do we do about these Democrats who are also standing up and saying, no, this is wrong? So, There are not a lot, but there are more and more. And there are ways to, you know, we have to have compassion for people who have really bought into this and really believe it, and help people understand how they've been hijacked and manipulated.
That law that Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, it's Senate Bill 2122, and the bill is called the Defense of Environment and Property Act. He's trying to stop this agenda.
Rand Paul's great, yeah.
Needs to be calling their senators to tell them to go along with this, to get this enacted.
SB 2122, Rand Paul, and it's basically so they can no longer call the water in your toilet a wetlands.
Go ahead.
If you do not know, the Regional Planning Agency, and this is led by an office out of EPB in Hamilton County, are getting ready to apply for a $10 million grant to study the feasibility of the high-speed rail between the Atlanta Airport and Nashville Airport. That's going forth. But just for everybody's knowledge, the City Council of Chattanooga just spent $341,000 to put a grass roof on top of their City Council building, which was actually built 60 or 70 years ago as a jail. And, but we've been fighting this for over a year in Hamilton County, and I've been called a science denier, flat earth believer, a conspiracy nut.
Yeah.
And we have no track record.
That's right. Well, you know what? We're getting more and more traction. This is what you do, is you spread the information, give the truth, the proof to people, and bring them on board with you. That's what you're going to do. Let me just get a couple other people. Go ahead.
How does the Treaty of the Oceans tie in with Agenda 21? It sounds similar.
Totally part of it. Totally part of it. Yeah. Go ahead.
There's somewhere in there they want to reduce the world's population by 85%.
Yes.
What are they going to do? Gas us all or what? Yeah.
That'd be a nice, easy way to do it, wouldn't it? Go ahead.
They have ways, believe me.
I have a friend who's Portland, Oregon, and he has 40 acres that he bought years ago. And it got declared by Agenda 21 as rural not for development. And he can't do anything with it.
Open space.
He can't put money on it. He can't cut trees on it. It's basically just trees. He can't do anything with it. Every year his taxes go up.
Right. See, this is it. And then check it out. Livable Memphis. I just came from Memphis. I was in Memphis and Nashville. Livable Memphis, which is the same thing. They say that they want to be able to take, if your property gets taken for non-payment of taxes, because eventually you're like, what am I, an idiot? I'm paying taxes, I can look at it. Well, so could somebody else. Let the government have it. So if your property gets taken for non-payment of taxes, Livable Memphis, which is another one of these groups, sustainability groups, 501c3 nonprofit, they want to be able to have your property given to a nonprofit given to them. Your property that was taken for non-payment of taxes, given to a nonprofit as long as they agree not to build single-family residential. As long as they build smart growth on it, mixed use, they can have that property. So this is how you lose control of your private property, and eventually it passes into government hands.
How can we stop, like Bill Clinton just got all this land put into the federal land grant, and everyone was clapping for it. They don't realize that's what the federal government...
You know, monumental, when they create monuments are like, you know, when you have these executive orders, it's kind of like an executive order, where they can actually create a monument just by the president's signature. And then this actually, a lot of these are in wilderness areas, and so what they do is they have, like, their priority is to purchase any privately owned property within those areas and remove the people out of them. They are wilderness areas. So this is the plan, is to get us out. Let me just take them first, then I will get you, because they haven't asked a question yet. Go ahead.
If anybody doesn't think that the appliance smart meter thing is legitimate, I recently spoke with a woman who lives in a suburb of Paris who just purchased a new washer and dryer, and she has a smart meter, of course, as almost all of France does. She is not permitted to use her washer and dryer between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10 p.m., even though she has 2 small children. They shut that off, as do all their neighbors. So the electric companies do control the power on those.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
So don't think that that's just a figment.
No, they really do.
Client salesman says this has a smart chip in it. Don't think it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, I spent years living in Mexico and Guatemala, and you only have electricity a couple hours a day and water a couple hours a day. You know, you don't have, when people come to this country and they have water all the time and electricity and a toilet that flushes, that is fabulous, you know. Where you're talking about social equity, you're talking about we have a long way to fall.
I think the liberal Democrats are going to come get your card.
I know. You're right. They've tried to pull my card, actually. Go ahead.